Ever since the dawn of mankind, there have been countless discussions, like fire versus water, or wind versus earth, or FL Studio versus Ableton versus Logic. The most difficult question of them all. Well, in today's video, we're gonna answer that question once and for all. So grab some popcorn and enjoy. Quick note before we start, so I'm gonna be expressing personal preference, of course. So if you want an unbiased view, or you just wanna, find the best DAW, actually try all of these. They offer free trials. So yeah, go ahead, do your own research. Let's get straight into the video. Now, as soon as you open the respective DAWs for the first time, after going through setup obviously, this is what it will look like for each one of these. So in FL Studio, you're gonna have like the browser on the left with your channels and the playlist on the right taking up most of your screen. And Ableton's gonna look something like this, with this like grey-ish color. And finally Logic, which is the sleekest one of the bunch, and I like this design the most. It looks like it's just professional, Apple. When it comes to customization, in FL Studio 21 we finally got themes after asking for years. Honestly, ImageLine have listened, and that is great. So you have the theme menu where you can make your own themes. I'm personally using this like dark-ish purple theme, which I made myself. In Ableton, you can have over 20,000 custom themes downloadable from Live Themes. I'm using this dark theme, which happens to be stock, but I'm gonna leave the link in the description. You can go and find the one that best suits you. And then Logic. Well, in Logic you don't really have the option to change skin or color, unless you download an app that is called LPX Colorizer that allows you to change colors of the DAW. Honestly, it has some pretty nice themes, but it costs $59.99, which I'm not gonna pay, and you shouldn't either, unless you're absolutely set on going with Logic. Alright, so for customization, FL Studio gets an A for excellent customization. Ableton gets an A+ for even better options. And Logic, well, Logic is nice in its looks, but I think it could use some customization menu or some theme setting or something, so it gets a B+ in this category just for being so sleek and good looking out of the box. Performance is an area where you want to squeeze the absolute most out of your computer and DAW. For this reason, I'm going to conduct a performance test. This is how it's going to work. All three DAWs are going to be on the same buffer size, which is 1024, because that's where Logic maxes out on my PC. Then I'm going to have the same MIDI clip be played in a Serum preset, which is just a super saw with 16 voices and no processing. And then I'm gonna keep doubling it until the DAW starts lagging. And that's our first test. Then, when the DAW starts lagging, we're gonna duplicate those clips for 5 or 6 times, and we're gonna leave it to export at the same settings. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's get going with FL Studio first. So I'm gonna put on my headphones. And now I'm gonna start adding Serum. Okay, so at around 7 is when it starts lagging. Alright, so we're inside Ableton. I'm just gonna open Serum real quick. And at 6 it starts lagging, so it's the same as FL Studio, maybe a bit worse. And let's go to 7. Oh yeah, this is unplayable. Yeah, so it handles 5 like 3. So it actually was an FL Studio, I'm surprised. So now we're moving on onto our final contestant, and that is Logic. Okay, so we're at 6 and we got the first lag, so this is the same as FL Studio. And Ableton's actually the weakest. I'm surprised to see that, because I thought it would be the strongest, but it's not, and it only handles 5 of these, so yeah, performance-wise, I'd say they're pretty comparable. But now, the real test is going to be the export test. So while these are exporting, we can go take a look at the next aspect of the DAW, and we'll come back later. The browser is the part of the DAW where you're gonna mostly look for your samples and in some cases VSTs. The FL Studio browser has been updated with the release of FL21, and it now allows for tags to be added to samples, and it has a search tool, which sucks. So it's far from great, but it's a step in the right direction. And also, one thing that I will forever complain about. After the FL Studio 21 update, if you open folders in your browser and you go into different folders, the folders that you already had opened stay open instead of closing themselves like before, and this makes it so messy. Why? It was so good before. Why did you have to ruin an image line? I just don't understand, and I haven't found a toggle to turn this annoying function off. If anybody has, please help me, because it's driving me mad. The Ableton browser is by far the superior one, having a search tool which works like a charm. It's like comparing the Windows search tool with macOS's Spotlight night and day. You can also add VSTs from the browser, which is a choice that makes sense to me. Why would you want to add them from a different place, you know? And with a search tool that works great, it's perfect. And Logic, well, Logic doesn't really have a proper browser, so you have to go into the All Files tab, then you have to search your folder where you have your samples, and when you finally get into your folder, you can start previewing and dragging samples in. And I know most Logic users don't even use the browser. They just use macOS's Finder, which is fine I guess, but it's definitely the slowest method, so I don't like to use it. Overall, FL Studio gets a C-. I really don't like the way you've implemented the search tool. It doesn't work properly, it's bad. Like, for such a massive update, to have a bad search tool is not acceptable in my opinion. Ableton gets an A, it's perfect. It's how you want the browser to be, it's just good. And finally, Logic gets a D, because the browser's there, it's just nobody uses it, because it's like FL Studio's browser before the update. It's mid. When it comes to workflow, FL Studio really differentiates itself from the rest. The FL workflow is unique. You either love it or hate it. It's a real mess in my opinion, but it can be an organized one. I like it. So you see, if you want to compare the workflow, first you gotta understand 3 basic types of clips. So basically there's audio clips, MIDI clips, and automation clips, which are unique to FL Studio. So audio in Ableton and Logic is tied to an audio track, which means it can only be moved inside that one track. Same for MIDI, where it's linked to a singular instrument and it can be only moved inside of the MIDI track. Now in FL Studio, you can move everything everywhere, nothing's linked to anything. If you have a MIDI clip, inside of that MIDI clip, notes are linked to the instrument, but that doesn't mean you have to keep it in track 69. You can go and move it to track 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, wherever you want, really. So that means you can technically have your whole project cramped into one track if you wanted, and it would work, because that's FL Studio.
狗呗。
And automation clips. What will you see in Ableton or Logic? If you want to do automation, you press the A keybind on your keyboard, and that brings up automations. In FL Studio, it's different. Automations are clips in the playlist which are visible at all times. So that's that, you can move stuff around and make the project look messy. Some argue that it's bad because it makes the project look messy, of course, but I would argue that it actually makes it more compact, which I like, because then I can find everything that I have in my project within 40 tracks or whatever. It doesn't have to be a 200 track mess like my Ableton projects, for instance.
But Michael,
Yeah?
you're making a mistake. It says here that you can make groups in Ableton and maybe in Logic as well. I don't know. I'm reading the Ableton guide. So you can just like compact the groups, and then it's gonna work. Then you can have like a not messy project.
Yeah, but what if something catches my eye while I'm scrolling through the project, Oh wait, it can't, because all of the groups are in compact mode. See, that's why I like the way you can organize your playlist in FL Studio. The closest you can get to this in Ableton or Logic is having two different audio clips in the same audio track. But why would you do that, honestly? Since audio tracks are also mixed tracks, so you have the same volume and it becomes a mess. Just stick to the classic workflow, Moving on to Ableton. I like it. The tracks are tied to instruments or audio clips, which makes for organized but huge projects. Overall, the playlist workflow is quite cool, and it can definitely be fast if you learn it. And finally, we have Logic. Logic's workflow is okay, nothing exceptional. It's very similar to Ableton. You have your key shortcuts, but I personally do not like it at all. It feels very clunky to me. It's not the best experience. That's just my opinion. So yeah, let's grade the workflows. FL Studio gets an A from me because it's just convenient. Some people might not understand it or say it's weird, and while it doesn't make much sense, if you get used to it, it's gonna be great. Ableton also gets an A because it's the best of both worlds, it's a Logic-like workflow where you have organized projects, but at the same time, it's fast. And I can't say that for Logic, because as much as I tried to make my Logic workflow fast, I couldn't. Logic gets a B+, because if you know how to use it, then good for you, but I can't figure it out. Automation is used for controlling various parameters, such as adjusting the volume or effects. It's the only way for parameters to change while the song is being played. In FL Studio, on stock plugins, you can right-click and then click on Create Automation Clip in the menu that pops up when you click. Simple enough, right? Well, it doesn't work like that on non-stock plugins, because why would it? Why would it be simple when we can make it 10 times more complex? To create automations on third-party plugins, you have to click this arrow, then go into Browse Parameters, and then find the parameter you want to tweak, and then finally, you can create the automation clip. Or, alternatively, you can tweak the parameter, go into the top menu, select Last Tweaked, and then create Automation Clip. It's weird. Oh, and there's an even faster way of creating automations for audio clips in FL Studio. You can go into this little waveform icon, and then you can press automate, and then you choose from pan or volume, and you're gonna choose volume, and from there you get a clip that is the length of the audio clip that you can modify, and it's a whole separate thing from the other clips. It's a mess. It's like a multiplier. Anyhow, FL Studio also has the most advanced automation menu, where you can go into the articulator and you can do all sorts of things. You can do an LFO, you can change the automation clip, you can do crazy stuff like analyze an audio file and then get the waveform as your actual automation clip. It's amazing. Not that anyone would ever use it, but it's there. So yeah. In Ableton you can copy and paste automation as you please. It is the best. In FL Studio, you can copy and paste automation by doubling automation clips and then selecting Make Unique. And this way, you're basically creating a new clip that is independent from the other one, so you can modify it. And in Logic, well, you can copy automation, but it's just very complicated. So you see, you press Command from the automation you want to copy, then you access the menu by command clicking, and then you keep your command key pressed and you select your destination parameter. It's just very complicated. I don't understand why, but it's only available on the same track, so you can't cross paste to different tracks, which is bad. I don't get why they've made it so complicated. FL Studio gets an A- because while it is the most complex, it also is the weirdest one, and it doesn't really make sense. On the other hand, Ableton makes sense and works, but doesn't have any advanced tools, so it gets a B+. And Logic, well, Logic is mid, so the only thing I can really give it is a C+. When it comes to stock plugins, all three of the DAWs have some great plugins, but once again, I think FL Studio is the most advanced, with plugins like Patcher, which allows you to basically make anything with infinite plugins inside of the plugin. It's like crazy. You have like a modular infinity basically. Or Hammer, which is a monster synth, which by the way takes 200 years to learn, but that's not important. You can just, use presets. Logic has the best looking plugins of the bunch because, of course, it's Apple. They're gonna have the best design. I mean, just look at this Chromaverb plugin. It's just so nice. Ableton has some good plugins. It has the Glue Compressor, which is absolutely goated for buses. You have Erosion, which is a great distortion. You have a great vocoder built in. But yeah, nothing compares to the mighty Soundgoodizer. Yeah, FL Studio has a lot of meme plugins, but some of them are genuinely great. Oh, and how could I forget? Ableton literally has OTT built in. Like, if that's not legendary. I also kind of have no idea on how to use the OTT in Ableton because just like a multi-band compressor with weird settings. So I don't know what to tweak, so I just kind of like stick with the regular one. But that's not important, like nobody cares. That leaves Logic as the only DAW that doesn't have any legendary plugins. Shame on you. Except it has, because in 2015, Apple acquired Camel Audio. Remember Camel Crusher? The free plugin that everybody used, like Martin Garrix and your favorite artists. Well, turns out you can no longer get it, but it's incorporated into Logic. So I guess it has some legendary plugins. Okay, let's grade the stock plugins. So I think FL Studio gets an A- because it has some great, excellent even stock plugins, but it has the most meme plugins. Like what is a 3-knob plugin? Why does it exist? It's an instrument plugin as well. Like why? That brings me to Ableton, which gets a B+, because, well, it has some great plugins. I just haven't found any unique ones that are incredible. And Logic gets a B+, because nice. Now this is a part of the video where I stop being such an FL Studio fanboy. The FL Studio Mixer is a dumpster fire. Your channel count is limited to 125, and each one of those channels can have 10 effects. That's it, you cannot add more. If you want more, you have to grab the channel, route all of the signals to your new channel, and then use the effect slots on that channel. Why? How hard is it to add a button? Like a little plus, you know? Another feature that FL Studio completely ignores is sidechaining in the mixer. So for instance, you want to sidechain the kick signal to track spacer. I have to send the kick signal to the target channel in sidechain mode. Now you'd expect every plugin to instantly receive the signal. But no, you have to go into plugin settings, then into hidden tab, and then in the second menu you can select your input. See what I'm getting at? It's like the devs started writing the code for this feature, but then they like vanished and no one ever finished it, because you'd expect it to happen automatically, but it doesn't. It's just weird, you know? Why does it have to be so complicated? Because fuck you, I guess. I don't know. Ableton's mixer is just the column at the right for adjusting volumes, and if you want to add VSTs, you double click. It opens the little menu at the bottom, and you can double click or drag them from the browser, which by the way makes the most sense to me, because it's just easy, you know? And it also has like this large mixer view that I've never seen anybody using except this one bloke who's playing music at the Volleyball Nations League finals, and he was using that view, so I guess it's good for playing large amounts of tracks. I don't know. He played my music though, so he's cool. He's like, great job. But other than that, I've never seen anybody use that view, so yeah. Just use the columns. You're better off. So Logic is similar to Ableton, but if you want to add an effect, you have this weird menu that's sorted by manufacturer, and you have no search function. So if you want to add an effect, it's going to take you 100 years. You're welcome. So FL Studio gets a D in this category. I'm sorry, how can you be so far behind? It's impressive. Ableton gets an A-. It's probably the best. I like the workflow of adding VSTs by double clicking, and the search function, please add it to every DAW, please. It's not that hard. And Logic gets a B+ because it's like Ableton, but adding plugins takes you 500 years. The FL Studio piano roll is clearly superior to every other. You place notes with your left mouse button and you delete them with the right mouse button. Seems simple, but in Ableton or Logic, it's a real mess. You have to double click, command click, or do all kinds of weird stuff just to place notes. Why does it have to be so hard? I have no idea. But in Ableton, if you learn your shortcuts, you can be very quick at writing notes just using your mouse and keyboard. Still not as quick as in FL though. And FL Studio has the best tools too. You can randomize patterns in every way you want. You can arpeggiate them, strum them, humanize them, and that's why I love it so much. And every other FL Studio user does too. It's simply the best. So, in conclusion, FL Studio gets an A on the piano roll. It's just chef's kiss. Ableton and Logic both get a B because they could use some improvement. The piano rolls in these two DAWs are probably their weak point, if I'm being honest. FL Studio offers an unlimited trial of the full version where you can save projects, but then you cannot reopen them again. There is a workaround to this, but it's meh. I would say it's a good free version. I mean, you have the full functionality, you just can't export. Ableton offers a free trial for 90 days with full functionality, and Logic does the same. Let's go to pricing. FL Studio, it's okay. You know, the producer version, which is the one I recommend because Fruity is a meme, you cannot do anything serious in it, is $229 after tax in my country, which is the same as Logic, which is also $229 after tax. And they both get lifetime free updates. Logic from the App Store as long as your computer is up to date, and FL Studio from ImageLine. With that we have a loser, because Ableton costs $349 for the standard version. You have no free upgrades whatsoever. Once Live 12 comes out, you're gonna have to buy again. And I know, there is upgrade packages, but seriously, you still have to pay for an update. We have results. Very nice. Okay, so before we get into the test, your results may vary based on your specs, but this is like a general guideline, you know. So our scientists at Myco Labs examined the 3 softwares, and these are the results that came back. So the performance on playback is roughly the same. Our render test showed something interesting. So our scientists showed that Logic is actually the fastest with 1 minute and 28 render time, and then FL Studio is second fastest with 1 minute and 30, so it's not off by too much, it's just 2 seconds, you know. And then Ableton is way up in the 140s, so it's like really slow at rendering. I have no idea what causes this rendering process to be so slow, but Ableton's definitely the slowest in this test. Right, so we've got results from my team of scientists. It turns out that this is the ranking. So let's start from the bottom. And the third best DAW of this video, in my opinion, is Logic Pro. It's just like that one student who is good at everything, but rarely excels at anything. In fact, Logic has a GPA of 3.000, and it's a straight B for Logic. Next up, we have FL Studio. FL Studio is excellent in some areas, like the browser or the stock plugins, and it's really amazing. But at the same time, it can be really bad. For example, the mixer or the browser are some areas that aren't refined, in my opinion. And that's why it gets a GPA of 3.333. That is B plus territory, but since it did behave pretty well, I'm gonna give it an A- overall, even though it crashed a few times. And that leaves us with the winner, and it's Ableton, with a GPA of 3.389, which is also B plus territory, but it's better than FL Studio's GPA. Well, I'm gonna give it an A- as well, and call it the best all-round DAW. Of course, this is personal preference, so I suggest you try all 3 of these, and who knows, maybe you're gonna find yourself working great in Logic, thing that I just can't imagine myself doing. So yeah, thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.